Welcome to the Iowa City Community School Board meeting on February 14th. My name is Chris Lynch. I call this meeting to order. I'd like to thank those in the audience and those on TV for taking an interest in our district business. I'd like to start tonight by introducing those at the table with me tonight. To my right is Superintendent Steve Murley and Directors Lori Rotland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kersling, Tasha Deloche, Paul Rosler, Chris Liebing, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda tonight is our student representatives. Do we have City High, Lucy and Lucy?
Large group speech was very successful at State, and our spring musical is Guys and Dolls, and rehearsal is right underway, and we have a lot of very talented students playing our lead roles. Our show choir spring show is this Sunday at 2 and 6 in Opstead Auditorium, so we would like to invite you guys to come. And City Lights recently won a show choir competition. Our varsity math team placed third in the state at the Great Plains math competition.
And mock trial is gearing up for a competition on March 4th, and they are off to a great start this year, and we have 2 teams now. The Yule Ball had 450 people attend last weekend, and we made $1,700, and 20% of that will go to Habitat for Humanity. Wrestling placed second in the MVC out of 14 teams, and we qualified 6 of our wrestlers to state. And girls basketball finished their season 20-1.
And currently we are conducting a follow-up on the Bell Schedule survey, and we have over 400 responses.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Lucy, and thanks for City High's continued support of Habitat for Humanity. That's just amazing, so thank you. Next up, West High, Michael.
Hi, everyone. So we had 3 West High students perform in the prestigious High School Honors Series at Carnegie Hall in New York City. So this is very exciting for them. They were nominated by Mr. Thielander, who was the orchestra conductor for a very long time at West up until this year. We had 9 students sign at the second National Signing Day of the year. The next one's in April. And we had 5 of those kids commit to Big Ten schools. A Big Ten and D1 program, so including the University of Michigan, Drake University, and Northwestern University. West High Boys Swing placed 9th at the state meet this past weekend, which was higher than their expected finish, and senior Oliver Martin won the state championship in the 50 freestyle. Our math team has also been doing very well per usual, and they've placed first at the Iowa State and Iowa Falls competitions. We had 5 wrestlers qualified for the state meet at the Wells Fargo Arena this weekend in Des Moines, one of them being Nelson Brands, who is the returning state champion. Our show choir is extremely busy during the month of February as they're competing every single weekend. Last weekend they competed in Benton, Iowa. The varsity team, Good Time Company, placed second, whereas show choir, the prep group, placed first. And finally, our Palms team finished 16th in the nation at their competition in Florida. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Michael. Is Tate High tonight? All right, next item on the agenda is the ICA update. Brady?
President Lynch, Vice President Deloche, Superintendent Murley, directors. It seems like we were just here. So, as a matter of fact, just thanks again for your special session last night. As word got out, people were, definitely relieved that vote had taken place. And we'd like to just publicly, as an association, of course, say that we are in opposition to the Senate File 213 and the House bill that are currently being debated right now. We really, I have a lot of people ask me, okay, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? And what I say, and I think what a lot of our leaders say to our teachers is, you're going to go to school tomorrow and kids are going to come and you're going to smile and you're going to affirm their existence and you're going to teach them to the best of your ability because that's what you do every single day and that's what's important in our profession. So we appreciate your support and helping us do that, and we appreciate that you're taking a look at that resolution later tonight and possibly going to vote to support that. I'd like to say that I'm going to be here for that, but as I left my house tonight, my wife said, "Honey, it's Valentine's Day." So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'll be here, but we do appreciate your support. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the language. And the next item on the agenda is community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You're reminded to give your name, address, and topic you wish to speak. During community comment, persons will speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed to non-agenda and agenda item shall take place now and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. To the extent you're commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of speakers, but is prohibited from Iowa open meetings laws from responding to questions from speakers or engaging in substantive discussion regarding non-agenda items. And only one tonight, Aaron Gillespie.
Thank you. Aaron Gillespie, 313 Windsor Drive. I promise to be extremely brief. I just wanted to thank the administration for issuing that recent statement following the travel ban. It made me proud that my kids go to a district that welcomes refugees and immigrants, and the statement was powerful and really appreciated. I hear that there are procedures being worked on to further protect our immigrant and refugee populations, and I just want to let you know that I support that and look forward to hearing more about them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Aaron. That's it for community comment. Next item on the agenda is the business consent agenda.
I'd like to pull items 8 and 9.
And I'd like to move or pull 10, 17, and 18.
Just checking here, 8 and 9 are network and server.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, Phil, it was 10.
10, 17, and 18.
Can we also pull 12?
Let me just check here. So 10 is any given child, 17 is mowing, 18 is fire alarm,
Yes, sir.
and 12 is the UIH.
No, psychiatry.
Yep.
So I move that we approve the consent agenda minus 8, 9, 10, 12, 17, and 18.
Second.
Phil, any comments on the bills?
Yeah. Everything, like I said, there's all the questions I had were answered. Again, it's, at some point in time, we have a discussion where we can kind of get ahead of some of these things, especially with making tough decisions with limited resources or an extremely shrinking amount of resources. But everything checked out fine.
Thanks. Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Next item on the agenda is the director liaison reports, and we just do that in writing, so that is in the packet. Unless there's any discussion, I'll move on.
Can I just quickly, wasn't thinking that the listening posts were a liaison item, but I know that almost all of us were at least 2 of those things. I was at 3 of them.
Absolutely. All right, next item on the agenda is,
I just want to back up a second. The motion said 19 as well.
Is that on there or no?
I don't think we meant to pull that, but we can just prove it later since we already voted. But so.
I can remove
we
it.
got it, we'll do it later. Negotiations update. Steve, we approved everything.
There's a lot going on. I think that probably the biggest thing just from an upcoming issue is that we'll be taking over 30 people to Des Moines tomorrow. I know one of the questions was asked was, well, they already did supplemental state aid. What's left? There are several big items in play. I was actually on the phone with a couple of our senators and reps today talking to them. Education savings accounts, vouchers, charters is an issue that's out there. Categorical spending flexibility is a big issue that's out there. So they're excited that we'll be there. We'll have students, parents, principals, central office folks, board members, and community members traveling with us. So we're excited about the opportunity to go there and meet with our legislators in Des Moines, right in the thick of things.
Is there less than 4 of us going?
Yes, there are less than 4 of you going.
Okay. Just want to make sure. And it's 11 o'clock at the Wallace Auditorium
Yes.
in Des Moines?
Yes.
Okay. So-
Steve, is there any possibility of getting some of those? I know we have the brochure.
Yes.
But I just so happened to get invited to a breakfast with them, so I'm going to use that opportunity.
Yes.
To talk about some
Certainly.
of these things.
Yes, if you
since I'm
ever-
going to be across the table.
Yep, if you ever need that brochure, it's electronically, it's available online, but Kristen is more than happy to help get printed copies of that for you, as many as you need.
Come back and reinforce.
Yes, very much so. And then just a reminder, I've been sending those out on Fridays to Sundays, depending on how quickly they come out, but we've got aggregated information that comes to us from the Urban Education Network, the Iowa Association of School Boards, the School Administrators of Iowa, and on occasion, the Iowa Department of Ed. They just sent another update out yesterday, so that'll be included in this Friday's or this weekend's mailings, depending on when those summaries are sent out.
All right, we segued into the legislative update. Any further discussion on that? All right, thanks. Moving on to teaching and learning, post-secondary readiness report, Steve.
Yep, and I'm going to turn that over to Amy and Matt, and they're going to turn it over to Diane. And again, maybe just as a quick framework for this, one of the things that the state is working hard to do is to try to aggregate information across all districts in the state, and then to share that out as a way for us to take a look at how we're doing, benchmark against others in the state, and better understand where our children are at individually in their schools. So, Amy and Matt.
Sure. Actually, I'll start with this, and then Amy and Matt, I'm sure, can help with questions that you might have. But as Steve said, these are new reports that have been just released to the community at the end of January. This was a result of a federal grant that Iowa received to create a longitudinal study of our college graduates that are coming from our high schools. So on the website that you can go to, you can pull off information for each of our high schools and find information similar to what I'm sharing, but the data I'm sharing with you presents the information as the entire Iowa City School District. So I'm giving you two documents, one that has basically all of the charts that are available to us from the Iowa City School District, and then kind of a report that the state also produced, and I just took their report and I added some columns to show how our data compares to the state. So if we kind of want to look through that report step by step, on the first page you're going to see data on the percent of our students who attend college following our graduation. And if you notice on there, we have higher attendance rates than the state of Iowa, and also higher attendance rates than the national average. 8.8% more than Iowa and 12.6% above the national average. So a higher percentage of our students actually attend college leaving our schools. We also look at some of the subgroup data on that page, and there's more subgroup data that's going to be on page 4, but this was just kind of a quick look at it. And we see that all of our subgroups also attend at higher rates than the national average, than the state average, and all of them than the national average as well, except for our Hispanics and Asians, who are higher than the state but not quite higher than the national average. Then on page 2, they present some data about the percent of our kids who go on to college but then need to take a remedial course in either math or English. And you'll see on those percentages as well, we do better than the state average and better than the other states that they provided in this report. Fewer percentage of our students who go on to college have to take a remedial math course or have to take a remedial English course. And you'll see that the English numbers are lower than the math across the board, and that's generally due to the fact that the universities don't have a remedial English course requirement. So any student going to the university is automatically going to be in an English course that's credit-bearing, where our community college may have a non-credit-bearing English course that they'll take. But math applies to both community colleges and the four-year universities. The information on page 2 is all presented too just from students attending Iowa schools, where the other information is from any school that our students attend across the nation. And you'll see in that information, again, our students are doing better than the averages that are presented there. And the disaggregated data isn't there because in our reports, they didn't provide that disaggregated by subject area, but I will show you again on page 4 where they combine English and math and then give us some disaggregated information. So then on page 3, it shows you the percent of kids who not only go to college as freshmen, but who eventually graduate or are awarded with some kind of college degree, whether it's a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. So as we're looking at a group of students 5 years out, so allowing for students who may have taken a gap year or who may have just extended, changed their major like lots of kids do and maybe extended it to a 5-year program, we see that our percentages again outperform the state. So the state has, for instance, 43.7% attaining a degree at the end of 5 years, and we're at 47.4%. If you combine that with the group right above it, so those are the kids who are still in college, so potential to continue to potentially earn a degree, maybe it'll take them 6 years or a little bit more, we're also far above the state average when you combine those two as well. And then if you go to page 4, this provides a little more disaggregated data. Not only the percent of our kids who are attending college, and that's in the first column. Again, all subgroups are enrolled at a higher level or higher rate than the state average. But then it also shows you a combined percent that had to take a remedial course, whether reading, English, or math. And again, most of our percentage are less than the state, which is where we want them to be, percent of kids having to take a remedial course, other than our free and reduced lunch students, IEP students, Black, and then our combined racial ethnic minorities. The rest of them are all at a better rate than the state provides. And one that I thought was particularly interesting, if you look at our ELL percentages, that really stuck out to me. We only have 10.9% of our ELL students having to take a remedial course when they go on to college, where the state average is 41%. So to me, that's a huge difference compared to the state. So that, like I said, is kind of a overview of the different kinds of information you can receive. Go online and you can receive it as far as what each individual high school entails. And otherwise, the longer report that I submitted shows you some more detail about Iowa City as a district.
Now on page 3, if I'm reading it, when you were at the bottom graph for the district, and 5 years out, we've got 47.40% that have earned a degree or 2-year certificate, and then another 13.10% that are still enrolled in school. Mm-hmm. That's 60%. The other 40 are no longer, or
either no longer enrolled or no enrollment could be found for them.
right.
Yep.
So we've got 40% of our students that still don't have a degree or skills.
Correct, compared to 45%, 46% across the state.
But you can't read it that way, right? So some of the kids graduate in year 4.
It's a cumulative, so if they graduated in year 4, they would still be counted in year 5.
Okay.
Or if they got a degree
Across.
even in year 2
No,
or in
it's-
year 1, they're still going to be counted in that 5th one. Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can offer, when we're at the State Superintendent Advisory Committee, this was a topic that came up in particular because a couple of the superintendents are in some smaller districts that are along the borders, and we do not gather any of this information from districts outside or schools outside of Iowa, and so they were really concerned that for their districts they showed very poorly on here, because if they're in South Dakota or Minnesota, there's no data on there. And then there was also some conversation about the fact that the data that is most recent is very accurate, and the further out you go, the less accurate it is because of the data gathering processes that the state was using at the time to gather that information. So that was from Ryan Wise with the Department of Ed. He thinks that it'll get more accurate as we go on, but he was somewhat non-committal on the reliability of the stats in year 5, at least with some of those smaller districts as they were probing on that.
I mean, I just want to chime in and basically agree with Steve about you have to be real careful with how you use these individual numbers and what you read into them. I think we all know that there's some portion of our students who are not going to get a college degree, and you know, there might be things we could do. I guess the number that concerns me is no longer enrolled and no award, you know. So if someone, that's the indication of somebody who wanted to get a degree and did not. for whatever reason. And again, we don't have 100% control over any of those things, but if, if we could do some reflection on what we could do to help those people be better prepared, that would be something. I also just think there's going to be a certain number of people who don't get college degrees, and I would love to see us have more of a conversation about how we can best serve those students, I always have to be a little bit of the wet blanket when it comes to comparisons to the state average or other parts of the country, because it's impossible to tell from this kind of data whether that's due to demographic differences or what we're doing. So it's nice to see, but I wouldn't want to take credit for all that.
Maybe one other note, and it's certainly not the right time for it, but one of the things that we are working very hard on, and we hope that we'll see some changes in our system over time with this, is the career pathway discussions that we're beginning to have with students as young as junior high. Kids that are coming out of school right now haven't been through that process to the degree that students that are in school right now have, and we're hoping that we're going to see some positive outcome from that in terms of course selection while they're in school, and perhaps a better idea of pathway to select when they leave school.
Can I ask a question about why it only went to 5 years? I mean, as someone who worked with youth, it has taken them 10 years to get there, but they were determined to get that degree. They had kids in the process. They had other stuff that happened that they could not control. And what I get concerned about is when we start stereotyping about how long we think our kids. I mean, there's average numbers, right? But the reality, these are real people and circumstances happen. Someone, family members have died that they had to pick up, and then they went back. So you know what I'm saying? So it's like when they look at this about when your credit goes, I think it's like 10 years. Like now, 10 years out, now you can't use that credit. So there have been some of our kids that are in that 24% that have actually went back, used that, and have graduated. So, I'm like, we can look at this, but then we also have to remember these are individual people, things happen. These are people who are making choices about their life, and they're not in our district at this point, and they grown folks. And so we don't know all the circumstances. Yes, we can always look at how we improve our processes about how we do this and how we gather this information. As you said, it's not as accurate, but just trying to add another lens to how we are looking at these 5 years, that 6 year, this number might be 10%. We don't know.
Yeah, a couple points on that from our conversation, and I let Matt in there. But one of the things that was brought up at the advisory council was that they asked the universities to measure their students in 4 and 6 years. And so one of the questions was, why aren't we getting 6 year data? Because the universities report out how many students graduate in 4, how many graduate in 6. So I presume in future years we're actually going to see it stretch at least to 6. I don't know if we'll go beyond that, but I'll certainly, we've got a meeting next week, I'll take that back to them and share that concern with them. And then another issue that came up as part of the conversation, the state is requiring that we go through the process of adopting a program to help students as they do that career planning piece. They endorsed, or they gave us, a list of 8, I think, to start with. They only endorsed 1 of those, and so we're in the process right now of going through that selection to be in compliance with that state requirement, and that'll also give us another tool as we work with students. But I think before Matt jumps in here, I think it's important to understand from what Phil and Chris were saying that we need to make sure that students understand the pathways that are available to them, that they pick one that matches their aspirations, and that they're prepared to follow that. If going to post-secondary education is not meeting their needs based on these numbers, then we have to make sure we have pathways in place for them that will meet their needs. Matt?
Yeah, I think there's just 3 big takeaways. The first is Iowa City students tend to fare better in those post-secondary institutions, so I think that's something we should be proud of. To Director Liebig's point, who gets the credit for that? I'm sure it's some shared credit, but I think that's the good takeaway there, is that students are being more successful when they enter those. I think there's opportunities, obviously, to get better. We want to share with you a strategy to maybe continue some opportunities to address that, along with the CTE redesign piece that Steve's talking about as a major part of our work. And then the third is just kind of questioning the data, to Director Deloach's standpoint, as Steve said, as you get farther than that 5 years out, we wonder reliability of some of those pieces. So don't want to make too many assumptions on that, but I do think it gives us a broad brushstroke about how our kids are doing in 4-year institutions and the success rate they're having. The other document you have attached to the agenda item there is Lead Hire initiative from Equal Opportunity Schools that the district is currently working through right now and considering that looks at our students of color and our free and reduced, our low SES students, and their opportunities to access some of our more rigorous courses in our high schools, and maybe some students that were missing that would be successful in those courses. What this opportunity would be is helping us identify who those students are in a systemized way and trying to link them in with either those courses or with some other high-level experiences that would lead to some additional post-secondary success. So this one specifically speaks about AP readiness. We know that we have a strong AP program, and if you look at a lot of those comparisons to the national average from what Iowa City does compared to that, very successful, something that, again, I think we should all be proud of. But there's some opportunities there, some places where we're missing students that could be successful in those courses. So this is an opportunity we're exploring that I think we know that if students take AP courses, they do better in college. There's research that supports their ability to be successful based on some of that. If we can get them into those rigorous courses and experiences in high school, we think that will drive some of those numbers. But we also know that AP is not for every student, and that's why Steve's point about looking at that CTE redesign and getting them hooked in with, okay, where will they be successful? What do they want to follow for a passion is also going to be an important part of the work. But I just thought that would be a nice preview to show maybe a way we're trying to group some more kids into some higher level courses at our high schools.
Well, you answered my question, which was what are the top takeaways, so thank you for doing that.
Tried to anticipate that.
One of the nice things that I see from these reports is at the UEN dinner, which is held during the November Iowa Association of School Boards meeting in, I think it was 2015. Each district had almost like a science fair type presentation where they talked about issues and initiatives that they were taking to change the narrative in their district. And one thing that's really reassuring about this data, or fairly reassuring to me, is that there was at least one large district I can remember, I'm not going to say which one, that was graduating a lot of valedictorians who were getting to college and finding that they weren't ready. And that district was having to take a hard look at grade inflation, a hard look at the way they were grading, a hard look at the material they were asking their students to digest. And I think that, I understand what Director Liebig's saying about, comparing us to the rest of the state and so on and so forth. But I do think that this data is somewhat reassuring that what we are doing for kids getting there, we have a lower number of students requiring to get the core basics. We're preparing them, but I do agree that we need to be reaching more kids. And I think it might have been very frustrating for districts who were graduating multiple 4.0 valedictorians and having them drop out of college within a year because they were finding that they weren't ready. So I think that's a reassuring thing shown throughout all these reports.
I'd still be interested in trying to build into, and maybe it's already there to some extent, but into the curriculum review process, some kind of equity step to really think about when you're making these curricular choices and textbook choices, et cetera. Are there some choices that kind of would be more helpful not only to our traditional 3 equity categories, but to, the middle or those who might be ending up in those top 2 bars? Because sometimes it does seem like some of the materials we use require more parental help than others, and to the extent that you don't have as much resources to work with there, on average, maybe we could find a way around that just by at least making a conscious step in the curriculum review process. I don't know if that's something we'd have to.
No, I think that's a good idea, and I think it's something we've tried to be more intentional about as we went through that curriculum review process here in the last year or two about is what kind of equity checks or tools are we putting in place as we review either materials or even processes involved in those different curricular areas. So I think that's definitely something we always want to take advantage of when we have the opportunity when we're reviewing the cycle. And, there's multiple steps in that curriculum review cycle, so there's good different checkpoints too to be laying that equity tool on top to either look at achievement data or look at curriculum adoption, whichever step of the process we're in.
or how we communicate it too. And we talked that with the science curriculum, having the flow chart really helps people understand it easily. And I think that, continue to do stuff like that so you can see the path and understand the path. I just build on Brian's point. I mean, my daughter's a sophomore at UNI right now, and our kids talk about this, whether they're at Iowa or Iowa State or UNI or wherever they are. And I'll just tell you that anecdotally, they say they're very prepared. So I think the data matches up with, if we went and asked our kids that are in college right now, they say a big difference in year one, in that they're very ready. And our average kids at City and West are doing outstanding when they hit the ball, hit the college versus it being the other way. So, in fact, I think we got to remind the kids of that. When 2/3 of your kids in the top quarter of the nation, an average student here is going to do very well in college, and we see that. So now you can always continue to make it better, right? Get the numbers higher and keep it moving. But
Well, and I would say that one of the best ways to get kids to finish to finish their degree is to start off with that solid footing. I mean, starting off with A's and B's in your first semester is awesome, as opposed to walking in and starting with D's and C's or finding out that you really don't understand the material. So I think that's what I hear time and again from students, is that again, it's a very small sample size, but what I hear from students at the end of their first year is, wow, I was ready for all the stuff that some of my even kids who had been groomed through college prep out on the East Coast showed up and they weren't ready for it. So I think that's an important takeaway. We can always do better, right? We can always do better, but we're doing a lot right.
And I think you hit on a good point there. That freshman, sophomore year is so important. Just like we know it's so critical for high school completion, that's why those remedial courses, and as students are incurring debt and taking courses if they're not in those, and we know they're making progress and positive progress, that's why it's critical to success, because that freshman, sophomore year, the success they have there really determines the ability to complete a program.
Well, and I think, too, we have to be careful as deeming success as having a college degree, because a college degree does not necessitate a high-paying job, depending on the degree field or what is taken. And I think that our goal should be some sort of post-secondary certification, whether it be a college degree or an apprenticeship with a trade union or a certification in a 2-year program. But to deem it as only being a 4-year degree from a college, there's a lot of liberal arts college degrees that can't make back their loans in a timely fashion, as opposed to someone who might take a carpentry apprenticeship program and make money and have benefits from day one. So I think we should be careful in engaging success as only a college degree graduation. On this one, I just had a couple of questions on this handout, the Equal Opportunity Schools one.
Sure.
We're referring to an AP pass rate. Can you define that for me, what the AP pass rate is?
Sure, that would be students that took the exam and then how many scored a 3 or better on the exam, so would have obtained credit that they could transfer to college.
Okay. And as far as, are we including in the kids that are taking that then the ones that don't take the exams, or just the ones that take the exam and what they score?
Right, I think that line item there just speaks to the students that would have taken the exam and then received a passing score. The other ones would involve any student enrolled in the course, but that's just looking at pass rate of the exam, so.
One of the, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I have a few questions. First of all, on page 3 of the blue document, it does say that this includes certificate, diploma, associate's degree, or bachelor's degree. So certificate, I assume that would be a technical certificate, like what Phil's referring to?
Yeah, they're talking 2-year completion too, yep.
Okay, but even just an apprenticeship certificate or something like that, not even necessarily college?
I don't think it's including those. I think they're looking at certificates that students earn as they go through the associates
So it's implying
programs,
at
right?
least
So there might be
associates.
some program that results in a state certification, CNA, something like that. So they're including those in there.
Okay, okay,
But I can definitely ask them about other types of programs that generate certificates when we're together next week.
yeah, I mean, it would catch more of the folks that
Sure.
Phil's referring to. Something I've always wondered is, do we help students pay for AP courses, the test, I mean? When they can't pay that themselves, do we have funding available for that?
That's something we talk about a lot as far as how to attack that. Right now, I believe that fee is on their own, and there's some assistance or scholarship they can apply for that. But most of that fee is incurred on their own, so that can sometimes be a barrier to taking that. We know that even if we can't tackle that, taking the AP exam fee problem, that still taking the course and being engaged in that will lead to better success in college just by having exposure to the content, even if they don't obtain the credit for it. Some students that even pay and obtain the college credit may retake that class if it's a major field, just to get a second experience in it. But no, that is one thing that limits our ability a little bit sometimes.
I was wondering, is that something we could get money from the foundation from, or something?
Or even community partners, yeah.
To set up so that we don't have students that are, taking the course and able to pass it and get college credit, really need that for, many reasons, and not.
That'll have to be part of our conversation as we talk about recruiting, especially more low-income students, as it talks about here, that, the ability to then take the exam at the end, is compromised through that. So we need to explore options to facilitate that in a way. So that's part of this process, is if we're really going to be serious about that, then how do we set them up for success at the end if they want to take that? So have we exhausted all those? No, but that's part of what we're working on, Lori.
Okay, and then I have a few other questions. So not the blue document, the other, that one, has some good suggestions in it. And and I have a two-part question. So my first part is, I'm interested in knowing what our next step is to have a plan to address those suggestions that they make and how to increase the numbers. I really appreciate that they've identified a concrete goal and said, this is what your district needs to shoot for. I like concrete, measurable things. So I think that's great, and I would like to hear what we're planning to do next. And then I also just want to point out, just again, I've mentioned this before, but my concern that many times this pathway to AP starts before they even hit junior high, as they need to take pre-algebra as a seventh grader in order to, take this new science class as a eighth grader. I mean, there's, kids are getting ahead earlier and earlier, and if they're coming into elementary school not having had that same advantage as others, I would ask, is that something that's being looked at, and how we can have an equal playing field going into junior high for all of our elementary schools?
Definitely, I think, so kind of two parts there with your question. The first part about next steps. This was, like I said, a preview for you guys. We would intend on coming back with an MOU. Of course, their service isn't free, so there's some financial commitment that goes along with that, but we're exploring, partners that would be interested in engaging that effort. So that's some of the work we're doing on now to see if this is something, and where that falls with priorities. But the next step would be really working through that MOU process with them. We had to apply to be accepted as a school district. So we've completed that. They're interested in our school and in our demographic of, the net gain we could have for students that aren't getting access to those, and honestly some of our success. So they know that we have a stable program that's a successful one, that if students are further enrolled in that class, that we're a good candidate for them in that regard. So I think that's what you would see from us next in that regard. The other piece is that this organization works a lot with districts that also work with AVID, and so they really like how they complement together. And so the building the skills early on then sets students up for success to enroll these up-and-coming juniors and seniors. If they're getting that skill-building opportunity through AVID, then they're more likely to be successful, more likely to be able to be enrolled in some of those rigorous courses, whether these AP courses or otherwise. But I think, like you said, you can't have one without the other, because that track does start early on. In some cases, not all of our AP classes work that way, but some of them definitely do. So we really like and think the complement of the two will work hand in hand.
And I have heard very good things about AVID from Kirkwood, the staff there, and how their students are just really thinking differently about themselves, even in second grade, and I'd love to see that happen other places.
Right.
Can I ask a question about on the equal opportunity schools? So they have those discussion questions, specifically on page 2, I think. I don't know, 3. And so talking about the opportunity for gap closure, are you all having, I'm assuming that you're having some of this discussion, but these are very good questions. And just really, I would like to know the answers for those, honestly, because that's what they're asking, so I'm assuming you all are having some of these discussions. But I think it would be really interesting to get some of that feedback as well about, I mean, I know I kind of posed that question the last time, like, do we think we can actually close the gap, and how will we do that? So that kind of feeds into these questions, and would be really great about how we can do that, because sometimes as an African-American parent, it looks and feels hopeless sometimes, just because the gap's been there for so long, and you start to feel like there's just no hope for us, and I don't know what to do. So just being able to answer that, and also being able to take that back to other African-American parents that are extremely concerned about that could be really helpful, give us a little hope.
Sure, and I think part of what's appealing to us with this is the evidence base they have from other districts they've worked with. We've had a lot of good people trying to work on this issue. We've had Achieving Potential programs, Southeast, Northwest, and then North Central this year, trying to work through kind of some of these same conversations you're seeing in those questions. And while we think that's somewhat effective, we don't have a way to measure that success. It's just kind of an informal with good people trying to do some of the same work. So I think, in answer to those questions, I think our leaders are committed to it. They know this is something we need to be invested in, but this gives us a research base and some opportunities to point to success in other places where this has led to documented success, where we're just kind of doing it from a grassroots approach, and this gives some system and some formality to an approach we've already been taking for the last year or two.
And maybe one of the things that really drew us to this was that they were able to show us communities that look like us. You find other Midwestern university communities in Missouri and whatnot, where the demographic looks a lot like we do here, and they were able to show that they identified students with potential who may not have been tracked into that as they were coming up through elementary and junior high, but clearly their teachers saw that potential in them, and then this creates a really robust process for us to build a cadre of educators who are working to identify those kids and help them make good choices as they go through course selection, and often identify kids who don't think I'm the kind of kid who should be in that kind of class, and move them in there. But then once they're in there, to help them succeed and get through it successfully, so that they are then inclined to take more rigorous classes after that. So that they are regardless of where they're going to go when they get out, that they have the solid fundamentals and some of the advanced coursework that we know is really fundamental to them making good choices about what their next pathway is when they get out.
So part of that, according to research, y'all know, is that you have to hire more minority teachers. Because research says that a lot of times those are the ones who are able to identify our white and our students of color as being gifted and talented at a higher rate. So I know that is a part of that process, but there's been tons of research about that. So I'm hoping that is going along with, it's one of our goals anyways, but obviously teaching all of our students to identify this, but that has been proven time and time again to be something that's been really successful, and being able to see all students through that lens, because they know how hard it was to get through, right. to be able to get in a district like this, knowing the barriers. And so I hope that we can nurture and support those that are here so that they will leave less, as well as that we can look to bringing more of those folks on.
I was looking at reading through it, and you could tell, like you say, that it's going to be something that would require us to pay, and the goal sounds very good, but I wasn't getting a very concrete sense of what they would do for us. And so if you're going to come back to us and ask us for money, I'd like to get a better sense of just what services they're going to provide.
Yeah, and this is just a preview, so I think we detail that a lot more.
On our own. Just in terms of identifying stuff. Maybe there is, something there, but I would just want to get a clearer sense of it, because you couldn't tell from this.
Yeah, this was just a kind of brief introduction of what we're, looking into right now. So when we bring back that MOU, that would detail what their role is, what our role is, and how that process actually works. Part of what Latasha's speaking to is working with existing staff we have that, students would trust, and, who's their trusted person that they would talk to about taking a chance on a course like this. So there's a process in place, and we could spend some more time talking about that at the next step.
Sometimes, you never know, and with the nonprofits, whether they come with sort of an agenda or an ideological agenda of some kind, I can't tell by looking at it. I kind of wonder where their money comes from. I can't tell. So maybe it's fine, and maybe they're doing exactly what we want. But I'd just be curious to pin some of that stuff down.
Yeah.
But we picked this piece out because we really like the gap analysis that it showed. It helps make visible where our areas of opportunity are for getting kids who are not currently choosing through a self-identification process to participate in that rigorous coursework that we know leads to choosing to matriculate somewhere and then succeeding when they do. So we've got a lot more material that we've gotten from our meetings through the University of Iowa with them, and we'll definitely bring that back to you.
All right, thanks, Diane and Matt. I guess the good news is a lot of the opportunities and the actions we talked tonight are on our strategic plan, right? It's just time and effort, and the faster we can scale them up, the better. So I guess that's the good news. But thank you, very helpful. Next item on the agenda tonight is the quarterly financial report. Craig and Leslie.
You have the quarterly report in the packet. Just a couple things of note are for projecting for next year. We have plugged in the 1.1% already in there, and we have backed off previous estimates of growth to a 1.5%. We previously had used 2%. So we're continuing with the thought process of the information that we received from Des Moines going forward. You'll notice that our pinch points are next year when we open Liberty and the transition with Hoover, and then out a couple years when we open another elementary. So those are all pinch points in there in our process. On the couple dashboards that are presented, one of those has been updated for the most current information, but we're still waiting information from the state sources that they compile with all school districts. So those are the major highlights and a couple takeaways.
So I didn't see any surprises. This is my normal question. I didn't see any surprises. Are there any surprises in here?
We're on track to where we thought we would be for the year at this point.
All right, further questions? Thanks, Leslie. Next item on the agenda is the IPM, which is the Integrated Pest Management Task Force update. Craig?
We have Dave McKenzie here, who is our district IPM coordinator, and he will brief the board on the activities of our program and the committee.
Okay, for the last few months, a small group, a work group, has been meeting rather than the larger group, and we just issued our first of promised monthly reports. I'm just going to hit some highlights from that. We spent quite a bit of time talking about how we might use the IPM webpage to communicate a lot of both routine and non-routine things that have come up that people may want to know about the program as it goes along. We have mentioned before the number of indoor pesticide applications has decreased over 90% in the first year of our IPM effort, and although we've recently had an increase in insect activity at City High and West that we had to address with some pesticide baits, there's still been no indoor pesticide spraying at any school since August of last year, which is a big change for us. In these two recent examples, we exhausted our non-chemical options, and when we did use a chemical, we used the least toxic, lowest risk method according to IPM principles. So that is a change over what we might have done a couple or 3 years ago. We've been doing a lot of experimenting in the last year or so with alternative methods to pesticides. Our ground group has used everything from power washers to some natural chemicals like vinegar and clove oil. And some of the experiments have been successful, some not so much, but we still have a number of more experiments planned, and we'll continue to do that, looking for ways to reduce pesticide use. We haven't done very much with training yet, and that's next on our list to address. We'll be looking at that quite a bit, not only for staff, but eventually we'd like to include students in that training program as well. So that'll be coming. Action thresholds for outdoor pest control are pretty well documented in our program at this point, but now we're starting to look closely at examples of indoor action thresholds for pests. We have talked a lot about communication, how to better inform school staff, parents, and the public about pesticide treatments and other things that we're doing. We have several methods for notifying people both before and after something happens, and those are being documented and will be reviewed with the task force as we get together. We've documented and reviewed several new or revised grounds standard operating procedures that weren't previously documented. So now we have a task force meeting scheduled for February 27th, and we'll be reviewing a lot of the things that we've been talking about as a smaller group with the big group coming up soon. So those are the highlights. Any questions?
Just have one quick question. Would you say that as you've gone through this things that you've done, has it been more expensive or less expensive to do?
To this point, I would say last summer, our attempt was to back away from pesticide as much as possible, do as much as we could mechanically, and we ended up being very reactive, and we ended up spending more last summer than we probably have in the past. It highlighted some areas where with judicial limited use of pesticide, we would be able to do a better overall job of IPM, probably at less overall cost. And what we did last summer was very labor intensive and was completely reactive. So what we're trying to do at this point is we're trying to use what we learned last summer, use IPM principles to do things in the most proactive method possible, but still minimize the use of pesticide as much as we possibly can. We want to use any extra labor we can get our hands on to do projects that will allow us over time to be able to reduce pesticide use even further. So that's on our list. We have a list of probably a dozen projects, outdoor type projects that will help us in the long term. In the short term, not so much, but over a period of the next few years, we're going to be in much better shape. So.
And hopefully you didn't take that as a knock, I guess, on what's going on, because I appreciate what's happening. I just want to be able to, when people ask me why is grounds maintenance so much more expensive now than it was when we weren't doing it this way, I'd be able to have, it costs money.
Well, to a certain degree, yes, but we're still in a learning process. So.
One of the points I want to bring up, and I know Craig and Dave and Ben and Director Hemingway and myself have been involved in a number of these meetings over the last 16 months with the IPM task force and multiple changes in leadership. And Jane too, I believe. Yes, most recently you've been involved, right? Yeah, it's been a while. But the education part, especially when it comes to internal pests, the education part and prevention is significant. And whether it was Kamiar or our other guest speaker, whose name escapes me right now,
Dr. Schauer,
Dr. Schauer, Mark, yeah. To Paul's question. As we start to institute the prevention and education piece. Especially for internal, that could be very, very helpful in keeping, it sounds like we've made some real changes, but in keeping our costs and down regarding internal. External, the weeds are gonna grow, the pests are gonna come, but I think that I think it is important. This is a value judgment, and it's pretty clear that our community supports it, and it's been invigorating work. It's been a great learning experience on the committee, but I'm anxious to see what we bring forward when it comes to the education prevention portion of it, especially as students, because
Yeah, it'll be fun.
about 14,000 of them could change some of their habits.
I have a question, not so much for Dave, I guess, maybe for Brian or some of us. The last I remember, there was the policy was kind of bouncing around in P&G, and there was a few phrases that were sort of still being argued about. I mean, where do things stand with that?
We actually haven't had an IPM task force meeting for quite some time. I think we're in a holding pattern there until.
Didn't we deal with the language at the table? I think we made the change right here, when we made the motion.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean.
Yes, we did have a motion at the table, and as was alluded to, we work from least hazardous up the alternatives. But to what Paul was saying earlier, we never question how much it costs to abate asbestos, or we would never question how much it is to abate lead in our water. We just do it. And, dandelions are part of nature. Pollinators are a part of nature. And the risk, does it outweigh the economics? I don't know. That's a discussion for us to have, but we have made great strides in the right direction as far as 90% reduction in internal spraying of our buildings. That's phenomenal. Our DNR pest control costs are still, they're doing our monitoring and things like that in our buildings. So, have we gotten a economic drop to reflect the 90% drop in spraying? Probably, we don't have a 90% drop in their bill, but we have a reduction in the hazards inside our buildings. So that's money well spent. One of the things that Chemiar proposed, and one thing that I think we have to be honest with the public, we are still spraying grounds because it's economically, we're using chemical trimming. Chemiar has sent in an email prior to this meeting a proposal of having some schools go absolutely chem-free, and I think that would be phenomenal for us to adopt. Personally, I want us to be chem-free on all our elementary playgrounds. I don't see any reason not to be, because I would err on the better judgment of student health. But I think that we should at least, as a board, suggest that we take Chemiar up on his proposal and have a pilot program on 4 or 5 schools, and we go absolutely chem-free and just check the results. And I saw Dwayne's email concerning why we haven't gotten the grounds back on that. We look forward to getting that report so we can kind of track and see how we're doing, everything on that. But I really think that we as a board should send a message to the community, which this is a big issue with many in our community, that we continue to have a goal of being chem-free on our school grounds, and that we would at least pilot 4 or 5 schools for this coming year going 100% chem-free, just for the comparison.
I hope you weren't assuming that I was against
No,
it being more expensive.
no, I was just
Okay.
using it as an example. Excuse me if it seemed heavy-handed, but no, there's a lot of things we do, and cost isn't an issue.
May I,
And,
excuse me, may I speak to the subject of Dr. Inshayan's invitation?
Sure.
I did talk to Cam Yar this morning to try to understand what it was that he was asking us to commit to and what his program is. And what he's trying to do at the moment is he's trying to take just a subset of the grounds. He's trying to focus just on general turf areas and try to get us and other groups to commit as much of their general turf area as possible to being pesticide-free. That's not to say that there isn't, that we are being, that we are not using any pesticide on that particular facility at all. But it's just focusing on a particular part of the facility, and that is just the general turf. And he says that he has found several groups, a couple of school systems, and a couple of parks that are jumping on board with him. He was very interested in having Iowa City schools commit something to it as well. And I told him, we were interested in talking about that and seeing what we could do to participate. So I have started that process, and we're gonna do our best to try to work out something with them that will work.
Well, and I'd be anxious, to see how since we have a IPM task force meeting, I believe, coming up later this month, I would like to see, since we haven't had a meeting, what the task force collective response, or the leadership of the task force response is to this invitation. Mm-hmm. Before the board were to consider anything. I do want to point out, though, that obviously it's no news to anybody in this room that with 1.11 that our general fund is going to be stretched. And, the difference between things like asbestos is that we can go to the SBRC and get recompensated for the cost of mitigating and removing asbestos from our buildings. We can't do that when it comes to this. So if, I think it's important that we get this that we get the task force moving forward, so we get things in policy so that we are committed to it. Because without that commitment in tight times, it's easy to see how what our goal is as a school district is, of course, to educate students and have the best educational outcomes. And I don't disagree at all that the safety of our students and our teachers and our staff and our buildings and on our grounds is incredibly important. But that's the value judgment, is that it's pretty clear we wouldn't have a task force if we didn't think that was important. However, things are going to be tight here, so we either got to move ahead and get things done, or we got to look it's going to come up in the future. I think it's something that we're either committed to or we're not. So I'm not trying to talk in circles, just saying it's important that.
A few comments from Chris. I think the language we took care of at the table, we struck like we're cost effective or something like that.
I couldn't remember.
I think it was something like that.
I am kind of curious, what's the next step for us that we're anticipating will come
Oh, I
back to
think
us?
the next step is we want to hear back from probably your full integrated pest management.
And is there a sort of a prospective time when we're expecting that to happen?
Do you have suggestions on that, Dave?
Only as fast as we can.
February 27th, the meeting, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And that's the full IPM group, or
Yes, sir.
just, okay. Now, were these earlier meetings made available to the public, or were they, I guess I don't remember getting any emails being notified about these small group meetings.
No, it has not been.
Okay. Well, I think, I don't have a problem with you having a smaller group, but I think it should be open for the public to at least sit in on and listen to the proceedings.
Is the smaller groups what we had decided at one of the earlier IPM meetings where there was going to be an external and internal task force, and Jeff Lauer was integral in helping to divide up kind of the executive members of the IPM task force, because it is a big group with a lot of widely diverse opinions. So is that the group that we're talking about?
Yes, it's a group of 5
Okay.
that's been focused on both internal and
'Cause
external.
I remember him proposing to focus on, the smaller group in order to get things done and bring it back to the larger.
Yeah, we were trying to put together as many details as we could to
It
present
is-
to the task force.
But I agree with Director Hemingway, as a member of the larger group and not part of that that smaller executive group, I think it would be nice, and maybe I'll bring this up with Jeff, is that if we were notified, at least to sit and, some of those meetings if we wanted to.
Well, why don't you guys talk that in a
Yeah, we'll figure it out, sorry.
I mean,
Okay.
there's a balance between getting it done and, so. But I think you guys as a committee should talk this and decide what you want to do. And,
Yep.
So I was going to say, I think to Chris's point, I tend to, I think from a cost standpoint, for me, it's absolutely normal. There's an investment up front, and I absolutely expect that the cost will be neutral or flat or down.
Right.
In the future if you really get proactive, right? So I'm 1,000% sure your committee's going to resolve that, and it's fine to have an upfront investment. That's the way it works, but certainly the benefit's worth it. So your committee's going to meet. I think you're hearing openness to if there's if you want to try some lead models and you need our support, please bring that back, and I'm sure we'll endorse it. I'm sure we'd like to hear all your recommendations. Is there any help you need from us tonight, Dave?
I don't believe so.
Can you let us know then when you'd be ready to come back, and so you can talk this on February 27th too. When does the committee want to come back, and if you're ready to make a recommendation or if you need any support?
So does this need to go back to because what happened is that I understand is this got kicked to P&G because of language change, which got kicked to.
I don't think so. What got picked?
I don't think it got kicked to P&G.
I think we talked about it, but I think we resolved it at the table. So I don't know. You tell me, P&G. Is there something you're working on?
I'm just saying I can't remember.
I don't believe it's on P&G radar right now.
No.
We dealt with that at the table. We talked about kicking it back, and we
Right.
said, you know what? No,
It was
let's just,
going back to
we're going to
the
do it right
committee,
now.
Go back to the committee.
rediscussed, and then come back to us, and that's where
That's what
we kind of.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like,
Right.
it's somewhere it got kicked
And
to
we
somebody
came
else.
close to having votes on language, but we never went further, so.
What's the time frame for deciding if we can participate in this pilot program or not?
Cam Yor would like to know in the next month, so.
Because you want to know for probably the growing season, right? I mean, spring, summer.
I think he has an announcement planned for April, so he wanted to
So
put
we
some
can
information together for that.
Potentially handle that at the February meeting.
I think we can,
Beautiful.
yes. Yeah, I
And will we
wanted to
need
cover it there.
Have board action to make that happen? Okay,
Don't
so
need
then
it.
that can be discussed at your committee and you can decide.
You can endorse it if you want, but wouldn't need board action. In fact, go for it. I mean, you guys should collectively decide and move on, I would say. We're happy to cheerlead.
Very good. Let's see see what gets discussed.
Doing lead models all over the place. You guys are the experts. Anything else on this tonight? So we look forward to sometime in March or April coming back and let us know. Thanks for a great update.
Okay.
And thanks, I think when you look at this report, it's just extremely proactive. It's exactly what we hope for. And so thank you to the committee and everybody who's worked on this, and it's exciting, so.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks, Dave. Next item on the agenda is Appendix 9. Dwayne?
Okay, we've got a lengthy Appendix 9. There's 9 projects with 22 requests. I'll zip through them for you. First one is Liberty High softball practice field. I emphasize practice field at Van Allen. This was a while back. We rejected the bids for this, but We've revised the scope from a more competitive type field to a practice field. Liberty High actually is going to be practicing at the Coralville Youth Center, I think they call it, for their competition, but they still need a practice venue. So that's going to go out for a bid on March 15th, and we're asking for approval of construction documents, which are at the physical plant, and setting of the public hearing for February 28th. The next project is the City High Upper Practice Field, which is complete, and this is step 9 for substantial completion, so we can release the retainage of $6,875. All the punch list items are resolved, and we'd also recommend acceptance of the project, which is step 10. Under building projects, small building remodels and small projects, we recently bid, and we had some discussion about those more substantial structural garages for North Central, Hills, and Coralville Central, and the bids ranged from $98,000 to $137,000. And my recommendation is to reject all those bids and send them back to the drawing board. So that's just too much for those 3 buildings, and we need to evaluate the scope and do it again later. Didn't take me long to figure that one out. I mean, the day they came out, I said, this is amazing that they were that high, but we had several bidders, and they were all up there, so. At Eastdale Transitions, we have a change request for $11,063 for some unforeseen electrical and mechanical work we found in the ceilings. We also had a code request to add a smoke detector, and the district requested to change some hardware, door hardware. At Coralville Central, step 8 change request for $10,886. This is actually a change to the architect's contract because of all the additional scope and work that we did there. Required additional time on their part, and that was part of their contract, and this is per the contract. At West High School, the upper level restroom project, it's a continuation of the 2 that we've just done the last 2 summers. We're just working our way up through the building. So we have schematic design development, construction documents, all of which are at the physical plant that need to be approved. And step 6, set a public hearing for February 28th, and we hope to open the bids on March 9th. Part of our roof management program this year is to renovate the softball and press box buildings, mainly the roofs at West High School. Last year we did a lot of work at City High School. West High is needing some work. So this drawing is for that. So we have step 3 schematic, 4 design development, and again construction documents, and request to hold a public hearing on February 28th with an anticipated bid date of March 15th. Safety and Security Phase 6B, which is City High School. Step 8 change request for $42,185. And we discovered that in the scope of the project, the wiring for the fire alarm system was not included. So we asked them to price it. They ended up pricing it 4 times before it was reasonable, but we think this is reasonable. It's $42,000. So we're requesting that. Twain Elementary, step 10, we already did the step 9, which is substantial completion. We've already paid the retainage. This is just to accept the project. It's long been done. West High School, phase 1, the drawings are in progress. We have step 4, design development, which are at the physical plant. I also have one more. Wait, excuse me. Longfellow, I missed Longfellow. Step 5, the construction documents, because they delivered them today, and they are huge. They're sitting on my desk down there at the physical plant for approval, and a public hearing for February 28th with the bid opening for March 30th at Longfellow. With that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
I just have a question about the transitions project over at Eastdale Plaza. I know that I was present at a meeting with the educators that are part of the transitions program, as well as parents and some students. It's the Capsto meeting. And when they saw the architectural design, and they had a number of suggestions, have some of those been incorporated into the, as part of that, some of that feedback, part of what we're...
I believe so. I know Jeff Barnes was working with the architect to make some of those changes. I don't know that they've been priced out yet.
Okay.
And Marla Sweezy did call me.
Okay.
And she was asking about a presentation board, and we're looking into that as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was Marla's job to follow up, so.
Yeah, I told her we'd take care of it.
Okay. There's some good feedback.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
the people that are going to be living and working in that space, you know,
Change is
some good
tough
questions.
change is tough for a lot of people, and that's a substantial change for that program over there. And
Yep.
they just don't see it fitting. I don't think they can visualize it until both spaces are wide open and they start using it. So there'll be some adjustments.
There were some reasonable suggestions about like natural lighting, and there's some limitations in what you can do for natural lighting in that space.
That building is what it is. And
Yes, it is.
Right, further questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple, Chris. On the storage units, are these so time sensitive that because this to me seems like an ideal project for student participation and construction and everything that way. At the Home Builders Show, I talked with some people that have been active in the old home building program, and they're very interested in getting student participation back. And in fact, there's discussions that a small town is giving lots for a student-built house during the summer.
Yeah.
Those types of things. Isn't this are these so critical that we have to put these up so quickly, or is this something that we could do on a schedule where we could get some educational benefit for our students out of it?
Well, there's two questions there. I'll answer the second one first, and that is, are they reasonable projects? And you know that I was a carpentry instructor for 5 years, and I think that if these were frame buildings, that they would be perfect candidates, okay? Right now, they're block and brick. They have to be redesigned, so let's see how the design works out. Unless there's a masonry apprenticeship program in town, I don't think it's going to be much benefit to carpenters other than maybe build a roof. So is it something that can be done? Sure. Would I support it? Absolutely, if it's the right project. So let's see how the redesign comes back. Maybe we can go from there. I'm not opposed to that. As far as it being time sensitive, the one at North Central was at the request of the city of North Liberty. Would they wait? Sure. The one at Hills got destroyed because of the duplexes we had to put down there, so storage is kind of at a premium. Could they use a storage pod for a while? Sure. Same thing at Corville Central. Their storage building got kind of ruined during construction. So if we're going to delay them and do them that way, we'd have to come up with some alternative storage units at Corville Central and Hills. The ones at North Central could stay there until we're ready. So it's a partial answer. I'll certainly look into it. I think a lot of it's based on the redesign, Phil.
All right, entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the Appendix 9 projects update.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Next item is withdrawn with consent. I didn't write down who pulled what, so if we hit your number, just take it away. Number 8.
So, yeah, I pulled number 8 and 9, and I guess I'd like to take those together since they do kind of go hand in hand, if that's okay with everybody. Adam, I just wanted to pull those items because, looking at the amount from SAVE that we're going to be spending between the two of them combined, it's about $600,000, a little over. And I just wanted your comments on what we're doing here and why this is important, and what this will allow us to handle and do both at our elementary and our secondary schools as far as our future vision for technology in this district.
Sure. So I'll take the network project first. So this is the item number 8. And the bid that we're recommending is an AOS bid for about $280,000. Both of these projects are intended to address infrastructure needs, technology infrastructure needs that we see as necessary in advance of one-to-one, increasing the number of devices in the elementary buildings, and expanding the number of services we have that rely on network performance. Both projects went through a full 30-day RFP process. This one also includes an E-rate element. I'll mention in a second what that is. So they were fully advertised to qualified vendors. We were pretty happy with the vendor response from both of them in terms of the number of bids that we got for each project. The network project is really an upgrade of our bandwidth district-wide within the district. So just a really quick hit overview. You can think of our network as basically like a tree layout. So the ESC is the center. We have 4 aggregate sites. Those are the 3 junior highs and then the physical plant. So there's a fiber connection from the ESC to each of those. And then from each of those sites, there are fiber connections to all of the other buildings in the district. So traffic from City High, for instance, gets funneled through Southeast and then to the ESC where it can go elsewhere in the district or go out to the world. All of those fiber connections are 1 gigabit, which was a standard in about 2006. It hasn't been a standard for about 10 years. Over the past 10 years, the norm is 10 gigabit or higher. So what this project would do is it would increase the capacity from all those aggregate sites to the edges from 1 gigabit to 10, and from the ESC to the aggregate sites from 1 gigabit to 40 gigabits. So a pretty dramatic increase. One of the big advantages that we have is that we have the capacity in terms of the physical fiber to do this without touching anything that's underground. All we have to do is change the equipment that's at the ends. So that actually makes this a far more affordable project than it would be if we actually had to go in and lay any new fiber, and this project won't involve any of that. The biggest reasons for it, and you can probably imagine since I mentioned that we're really operating on a 10-year-old standard at the moment, but network performance is a real issue. We have about 20,000 devices that operate on our network, and most of those are coming back through those 4 aggregate sites. So 1 gigabit, to put it in perspective, is the same amount of bandwidth that I would have to this computer if I plugged it into an Ethernet port on the wall. So all of the traffic from an entire quadrant of our district is going through the equivalent of that 1 cable that you'd have when you plug in your computer's Ethernet port. And that's resulted in some real performance problems for us. Quick example of that, when we deploy software updates, for instance, for Smart Notebook, the software teachers use for the interactive whiteboards, it's a pretty large update, and ideally, we'd be able to deploy that in a day on a modern network. On this network that we're proposing, we would. In reality, we have to slow drip that out so that the update doesn't dominate our network's capacity and basically make it unusable for anything else. So rather than doing an update over a day or 2, we do big updates over a course of weeks or sometimes months that we have to schedule those out building by building to make it happen. So that's a big issue. Obviously, as we look to add about 3,000 devices in the next 2 years, and more of those devices rely on cloud services. Chromebooks, for instance, are really always connected. This upgrade is pretty critical for us. One quick note, the price tag $279 is a little bit misleading. This project is E-rate eligible. I should say 75% of the cost of this project is E-rate eligible. So that's a federal program that provides reimbursement for certain communications related costs. And our reimbursement for this project will be about $126,000. So the district's ultimate cost will be about $150,000 for this upgrade district-wide. And this will impact all of our buildings. This will touch each building. Any questions about the network project?
Yeah, just
yeah.
Okay, so I get your quadrant thing. What schools go through the physical plant? Is it West High Hills, that type of thing?
You know, I don't remember right offhand. I'm going to turn to our tech operations manager, Justin Miller. Do you know offhand what schools go through the physical plant? West High, Okay, so most of those schools that are physically located in that part of the district. Yeah.
I have, I guess, maybe it's a premature question, but I'm kind of curious, these two things together, how much of it is made necessary? I mean, it sounds like some of this you'd have to do no matter what. How much of it is made necessary by the one-to-one? And is any of it attributable to the anticipation of either smart or balanced or some kind of computerized standardized test that may be imposed upon us?
Yep, neither one's directly attributable. I'll take the second part first. Neither one's attributable to smart or balanced or other computer-based testing, although there are certainly implications for that. You know, as we deliver those, we want our network performance to be good. But really, the first project would be necessary even if we weren't launching a one-to-one initiative next year, even if we kept things status quo. We're really operating at a point where the efficiencies we're losing out on by having a dated network are pretty evident right now. So the first project, not much. The second project is much more closely related to one-to-one.
All right, anything else? This is a consent agenda item.
How long do you expect us to be up to date with this level of 10,000 or 10 and 40?
Yep, I think that this will probably keep us up to date for about 10 years, which is usually the lifespan you hope for. It's very difficult, obviously, to predict needs going forward. There's some possibility that in 10 years we're talking about primarily wireless solutions for an entire district. But when we look at that 1040 number, it's a number that should keep us in pretty good shape, even as we see potential for a one-to-one program at all grade levels, or an increased reliance on high bandwidth applications. The second project, the virtual application project, also our recommendation there is for AOS, who came in with the lowest bid for that project. Again, full 30-day RFP. This is really two projects wrapped into one. I'll mention them both briefly. One is a scheduled upgrade for our virtual server and storage infrastructure. So all of our network servers are, network services are provided by virtualized servers. Basically, we have a handful, 3 actual physical servers that exist back here in the ESC. And each of those servers runs a dozen or more virtual servers that operate within. It's a highly efficient approach. It's one that predated me here in the district. And this is really an update to that. So it's a replacement of that physical infrastructure. Then also an update to the software that hosts those virtual servers. And those services include things like our library, checkout software, printing, device management, security, time clocks, transportation. Overall, we have somewhere around the area of about 90 virtual servers that provide different services to the district. The part of this project that relates closely to one-to-one is virtual application delivery. And this, to me, is a really exciting project. Basically, what it allows us to do is to distribute any Windows software over the internet to any device with a web browser and an internet connection. One of the limitations to going with Chromebooks for a one-to-one is that Chromebooks can't run full version software. If you're in an engineering class and you want Autodesk Inventor, you can't run that natively on a Chromebook. If you're in a business class and you need Excel, you can't run that natively on a Chromebook. This will allow the district to deliver any of those software titles over the internet, so students not only have access to them on a Chromebook or frankly an iPad, or you could even run a full version of Photoshop on your phone if you wanted. Not only do they have access to the software, it also gives them access anywhere with an internet connection. So it's really in many ways an improvement over the current scenario. One of the other advantages to it is that it enables us to take out a lot of, or basically eliminate a lot of future investment in specialized computers, lab computers that we might have to have in place even with the one-to-one, because we still need this on Windows and that on Windows. And a pretty conservative estimate is that that's going to save us about $500,000 a year in the cost of equipping high schools and junior highs at this point with computers to do that. Another note on this one, again, the overall expense is a little bit misleading. Years and years ago, you may recall that the district, not the district, the state, settled a lawsuit with Microsoft that provided a large amount of funds to the districts, but they were heavily restricted. We found it very difficult to use the software portion of that money because A, the list hasn't been updated for what's eligible for years, and B, the list initially was so restrictive as to eliminate most of the things we spent money on for software. Citrix XenApp, which is our virtualized application solution, is fully eligible. So the Microsoft settlement reimbursement to the district would be about $165,000 out of this $356,000 item.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Is there any reason, as far as the server and virtual application one, that approval of that couldn't wait until after we've had our one-to-one discussion. I mean, we never really discussed the one-to-one thing as a group. I'd be a little more comfortable with a big expense like that if I had a bigger picture understanding of the one-to-one.
There are some time frame elements. The deployment process for this, and I don't remember the exact number of weeks, but it's about a 6-week deployment after we get hardware in and that sort of thing. So there's some time sensitivity in that we really wanted to get this launched so that teachers could make use of it at the start of summer. Obviously, we're not quite there, so if this got delayed until, a later date, as long as it wasn't a much later date, that'd be fine.
We already approved the purchase a couple months ago for all the computers, right?
Yeah, I still, until we've actually, I just feel a bit more comfortable with it waiting for 2 weeks.
And Adam, on the system where we have something existing and we're swapping it out, are we doing anything to recoup or get anything back on the existing technology that we have that we're upgrading?
Yep, anything that we get rid of, we always request bids for buyback on. So we'll do the same thing with the servers that we're getting rid of. It is possible with some of the servers that we'll keep what we have for basically an emergency backup were one of our new servers to fail. We could plug in an old one, have redundancy in place so that we could do that. But anything that we get rid of, we would request bids from vendors to buy back.
Okay, and that's multiple vendors, or is it just the successful?
Yep, so the buyback for this project would actually be part of a separate buyback bid that will actually release an RFP just for the buyback of existing equipment.
Okay, so there'll be multiple
Correct.
bidders on it. Yep. Excellent.
Do we need separate motions, or can I move that we approve both
items?
I move that we approve items 8, consent agenda items 8 and 9.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Hemingway, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Liebig voting nay.
Thanks, Kim. Number 10.
Yes, this is the theater, the one-day theater professional that's being flown in for $2,900. We've got a Big Ten college with a very good theater department. Isn't this something we can utilize our local expertise and personnel? I understand the money's coming from other areas, not necessarily impacting the general fund, but still, I'm a big proponent in supporting local personnel and talent.
This is a contract with an arts presenter from Any Given Child. And just to kind of refresh your mind on our Any Given Child program is a program that's supported throughout the community that really is an advocate for our arts education for our students. So we had a few teachers, I want to say 2, last year attend an arts integration workshop and a conference, and they viewed several presenters that have worked with the Kennedy Center to become professional development presenters. And Dr. Flynn, Rosalind Flynn, was one of them who they attended and came back with raving reviews about her and about the kind of professional development she provided. So that's why we initiated contact with her to see if she could come and provide that same professional development for a group of our teachers. And we worked through the Kennedy Center and were able to get a $1,000 grant to support one of their presenters coming out here. So that's kind of why we went with her.
Did we approach anybody locally, or we just pretty much?
For this, we have not. For other Any Given Child activities, those have all been local presenters. So we have accessed, for instance, sending students to Hampshire. We've accessed the University of Iowa Museums. We've accessed Orchestra Iowa. We've accessed Henry Cardenas, which is a local artist that we brought in through the Ginsberg Artist in Residency program. So that has been certainly a focus of the Any Given Child program, but this was one that we wanted to kind of hook up with the Kennedy Center, who is supporting Any Given Child, and kind of align with the presenters that they are promoting.
All right, I entertain a motion.
Motion to approve item 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Okay, I'm ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Ms. Lynch, I didn't get your vote.
I voted yes.
Yes, thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Hemingway voting nay.
All right, number 12.
So I mostly pulled this because I have had the opportunity to talk to a couple of youth, focus groups of youth, and mental health keeps popping up. I mean, like, a large extent of the discussion has been around that. And so I'm not sure that when I ask youth about having access to mental health services, a lot of them don't know that we have these. I mean, I know that because of the type of work that I do, but a lot of them are not aware of this. And so I pull this because I know these are residents and they're coming in, and that's fine. But, like, how can we get more kids to know that this exists? I mean, I know there's some insurance pieces and some other pieces where they have to get permission, but I don't think that they know that it's there. And at least broadly, there's a lot of anxiety right now and a lot of depression that they're dealing with, and they feel under a lot of pressure. And so I'm concerned about that. Their concern is that people are not really realizing what's going on with them until their grades are almost getting pretty close to bottoming out, and then people are asking how they're doing, versus they feel like they're kind of slipping along the way and they're not sure where to access these services. And so if there's a way that we can, and I don't know how to get this out, but maybe you all know some other ways. I'm in support of this, obviously, but I really am concerned about our kids' mental health. They are extremely under a lot of pressure, and they're stressed out. We can talk about all this academic stuff, but a lot of them are stressed out because of it, from home and school. So, I mean, I don't know how we can get that out to them, that they can be more aware that there are services, as well as parents to be aware that their kids could go. I mean, it is limited, right, because they are only in certain schools for so much time, but I don't know what we can do to try to improve mental health, but I know that that's a part of some of our goals and stuff, is to improve that social emotional component of their learning, and they have to be well for them to be able to receive education. So I don't know what we can do to improve that, but I am really concerned about our kids' mental health, because the fact that they're saying we are in desperate need of mental health services really concerns me, because that means that that's a cry from them saying we need help and we're not getting the help that we need. So
Does that take away for tonight then? Take away?
Sure.
Yeah.
Please.
We can certainly share that with Susie Polton. I appreciate that. And it's something, of course, we're all concerned about. I think the state of Iowa is recognizing it. We just don't get the funding. One statistic that I think would be interesting for all of you to know, that since the inception of this, since 2011, 220 students have been served in 643 clinic visits with these residents' availability to the students. So it's a really nice number, but like you said, Latasha, I'm sure we're not reaching everybody.
They're suggesting even having therapy groups, so I don't know if there's any possibilities of being able to serve more students and maybe in a group therapy setting versus individual one-on-one. I just think that I felt a little bit of desperation from them, is that they know that when they're calling out mindfulness and meditation, I'm going, okay, we really need to do something when these kids are trying to seek how they can get well because they're not feeling well. And so, and there's been upticks all over the country, right, with people requesting more to be able to deal with day to day. So I'm really concerned about that. I would rather us be on the prevention end of trying to address these issues than on the reactive end because of whatever can come after that. So I just hope we keep that on the forefront about our kids' mental health, our community's mental health, seriously, about how we can take care of each other and we can take care of our kids.
All right, I entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve item 12 from the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Chris, you're not registering
Yes.
yourself? Yes, thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, number 17. I'll be right
Yeah,
back.
I pulled that one. A couple of things on it. We're spending $75,600 on an 11-foot wide mower. And we chose a further away trailer than a closer trailer for $5 difference. Can you give me your justifications on spending the $75,000 on an 11-foot wide mower as opposed to a wider one that would be tractor mounted or tractor towed and would cover more ground at the same time?
How wide is that mower? Okay. Ben tells me that the wider ones are just too wide for our purposes and the turning radiuses are too great. So this the right size mower. Obviously, we're purchasing this for Liberty and for Hoover. As far as the trailer, you just take the bids the way they come in. I don't ask them to change them later, and that's the way they are.
Is that cost delivered?
I believe it is.
Okay. And if we have one issue with it, if we have to drive to Hiawatha as opposed to driving to Kelowna?
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, I think they're both pretty close to being local.
Okay. Because we have bought other equipment from higher vendors in the past because of preference that way.
I don't think there's maybe this is something for a future discussion, but a distinct board policy would direct me to do one thing over the other.
All right. Move the approval of 17.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm voting yes. Just gonna tell you that right now.
Thank you.
Trying to sway things there?
Just trying to be proactive this time.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Hemingway voting nay.
Did it come through that time?
No, I clicked it.
All right, number 18.
Okay, number 18. This is alarm equipment upgrades. Now, earlier, and I hope I thought I copied everything off, and excuse me if I come up wrong, but we voted in, was it?
The last meeting.
The last meeting
Yes,
for
sir.
the contract.
Right.
And we chose this vendor because it was $400 less than the existing vendor.
That's correct.
And I assume that the equipment we have is working today, correct?
It's proprietary to the company.
I understand.
Okay.
But it was never made apparent to us that when we saved $400, we were going to spend $30,000 to upgrade the system. And if we had continued with the one vendor, it would take us 60 years to recoup that cost.
Okay, there's one other little part of that I didn't put in the item, but I wanted to check with that and make sure I was correct. Is that the technology department no longer wants to support landlines and telephone lines that come into the building? They're trying to get away from that. So that was part.
Excuse me, who is?
Our technology
Oh, okay.
department
S-
is
so
getting
the-
away from supporting phone lines or landlines that go into the building. All our phones now are internet protocol based. So this system also is an upgrade from a landline notification system that could be interrupted to a wireless, which is, I'm told, more dependable.
Did we get a bid from the previous company on what it would be to meet that same
Yeah.
criteria?
I'm not aware that we did that, Mr. Hemingway. This was done by others in my department, but it was, how do I say this? Should it have been part of the earlier board item? I think that was a reasonable request, but it wasn't. And I wasn't aware of it. This came to my desk last week, so I would apologize if you think that was the case.
Well,
I don't think there was any intent to deceive anybody.
Well, I, as Paul Harvey would say, this is the rest of the story. I would have liked to have at least seen what the existing vendor would have charged us to maintain or to meet the same criteria. I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
We save $400, but we're $400 annually to spend $30,000.
Part of that change in the service too, I think it was precipitated by the service that we were receiving. We weren't quite happy with it. We've had a lot of issues with them. So that was one of the reasons we checked out the monthly service and went from Simplex to Midwest.
So we weren't happy with our fire service but prior to this? Our
That
fire
was
alarm
part of the
service.
reason for doing it. Otherwise, I think we probably would have just renewed their contract.
Move,
Approval of number 18.
approval of 18.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
And can I just ask, Dwayne, in the future, can you ask your staff to please, if there's equipment upgrades involved?
You can almost be guaranteed that that's going to happen first thing tomorrow morning.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I voted yes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Hemingway voting nay.
And this is just cleanup. I'd entertain a motion to approve number 19.
So moved.
Paul is the first. Is there a second?
Second.
You can have it, Phil.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Phil.
Clear? Is that clear for you?
Gotcha. Online voting is open.
I'm voting yes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Item on the agenda is agenda setting. On the 21st, we have Education Committee. There's 3 topics. One is there's a curriculum review going on right now in ELP. We previously reviewed some academic data, but we didn't have a lot of time to look at it the night we reviewed it, so we asked to put that on the Education Committee, and then we'll continue our conversation on pre-K. Questions on that?
I don't particularly want to add to that agenda because I think it's enough to fill the hour, but I kind of want to get in line either on that. I never know what goes on the education versus the work sessions, but going to what we were talking about earlier, about trying to find kids who are capable of being in our advanced classes and getting them in them. I'd like to have a discussion at some point about our approach to rationing, enrollment in advanced courses, which right now, a lot of times you got to jump through some serious hoops and place very high on a placement test, when it seems like maybe more kids than that could benefit from being in those classes. So I'd just like to have that discussion at some point.
So the agenda topic's AP. classes?
Not just AP, but advanced classes, like our track and math that you can get on at some point.
I think that could probably be included in the piece on curriculum review with the extended learning program. I think that would be an
Well, if we could
appropriate
start that discussion, then
ancillary discussion, so I think we could definitely start it there.
Well, it's part of it. But let's add it to the parking lot, and then we'll see if the education, if that topic addresses it or not. Anything else on Education Committee? Took a stab at trying to book the board retreat for the February 26th. If that works, doesn't work.
It doesn't work for me.
Do you want to suggest some dates?
I just know that one's not going to work for me.
I'm probably not available. I mean, it's not clear to me what we're going to do at that retreat that we haven't already done. And, in terms of being motivated to reorganize my weekend plans that I do have for that day, it's hard to, I guess I don't really understand the point of the retreat. We had one 6 months ago with those same 2 items on it. And I guess part of me is wondering, well, maybe it's specifically about promoting the bond, and if that's so, I'm not sure, you need me there.
So, Chris, I mean, I think we just said that every 6 months we'd attempt to have a retreat, and it's really just to revisit the goals and revisit the board norms. So you're saying you're not interested in attending?
Well, on that date, I wouldn't be able to make it.
Do you want to
I
propose?
don't really want you to reorganize it for my sake if those are the items.
Is there a proposal on another date? I mean, we can doodle poll it again, but if there's no interest in having it, then I'd rather just have that conversation. Or if there's only a subset that want to have it, then we can have that conversation. But I'd rather not have the same conversation over and over. So we're either doing it or not. This date works or it doesn't. I mean, it's okay. If there's people that don't want to participate, I prefer to have everybody there, but if you're not planning to make it work, then let's just go with what we got. But Phil, do you want to propose some dates, or we can do it over doodle poll? We don't need to do it like right here.
I'll check my calendar and things, but that day won't work.
Okay, so why don't we try one more time in March? And we're trying to get this done while the weather's not as nice. It's going to be 60 degrees this weekend, but pre-spring. But so Kim, why don't we try to set up a poll and.
Is it Sundays that's the problem? Is it time that's the problem? Is it the whole day?
Daytona 500 and the Academy Awards.
And
But-
I'm scheduled to work that day, so. I work quite a few weekends, so weekends are always going to be tough for me.
It's kind of a work weekend for me too this weekend, but again, I don't think you should be.
We'll try again, and I think we can probably keep it to 2 hours too. So, all right.
Wow.
Anything else on that one?
I'm going to have to rearrange everything all over again. Thanks.
Board agenda on the 28th.
So should we put something on that agenda for the board meeting? We had sort of bounced around a little bit in maybe some of the emails about the districts looking at Des Moines and what Des Moines is doing with the students who might be affected, the DREAM Act students, and the other students who might be affected by some of the immigration changes, that maybe we would be interested in doing something similar to that, just in terms of resolutions. And I don't have a more concrete sense of it at the moment, but if, it's sort of time sensitive, and so if we're going to do something, maybe it needs to happen at the meeting and not at a work session.
Well, my preference would definitely be to have it at a work session, but did you see the email that went out today?
About that particular item?
Yeah.
Maybe not yet.
I mean, I'd suggest we kick that to work session and chat. I mean, administration's already taken some action on it. At least make sure we're up to speed on that, and then we can decide if action's required or not.
I would like to see us make a resolution. I mean, I appreciate what Kingsley put together and the administration put together. I very much support that, but I would like to take the next step of making a resolution to tell other parts of the country.
And I don't have any problem with that, but that's best done in a work session, I think, unless we've got proposed language already.
I like Des Moines. I don't know if we can
I think we need
take
to have
from
an-
them, but
I'm
we
gonna
don't want
suggest-
to plagiarize, but I like what they did, so. That's fine if you want to put it on a work session, but I do agree that it is somewhat time sensitive.
Any issue with the work session, we can bring it right back to the next board meeting. I just think, well, let's have an initial discussion and then
And we would have another board meeting before spring break?
there's only one in March.
Yeah, so but if we put it on the 28th work session, is there a work session on the 28th?
Yes.
Okay, so then we could have, okay, I think that'd be great if it's before spring break.
I think it's right after spring break.
Oh, so there isn't a board meeting before spring break, okay.
There's one on the 28th.
Right. Oh, yeah, I meant in March, I'm sorry, I meant in March.
It's just the way spring break falls, it's the second Tuesday, so.
Okay.
Anything else for the agenda on the 28th? So we have work session, we have facilities master plan, geo bond, we'll add immigration. Else for the work session?
Well, one thing, and this can be a parking lot item, but at the policy and governance meeting, we started a discussion a little bit on what our district's doing about closing the gap. And I think it was a good discussion that we talked about maybe bringing to the board table or board work session. I just would like to add that at some point.
What's the title of the agenda item?
I don't know what.
Miracles can happen.
I mean, honestly, it started with Latasha asking if we could, if what we're doing is we're actually taking action as opposed to just writing policy, and these guys just opened up with all the stuff that they are doing, which I think needs to be discussed as a whole board.
So it's a strategic plan / closing the gap?
Yeah.
Conversation, is that?
We can make it fancier.
Okay.
It was a very good discussion. It was,
We can work the title, we just need to make sure it makes sense to people that they know what we're talking about.
Would that be a good time to get a report out on Avid? Possibly? That would fall in line with that? I mean, that's something that's being done for
We can make that a
achievement gap.
subsection, yep. And if there's other things you want to bring forward. All right, and then we're proposing a closed session on land acquisition. I'll let you know, we'll plan 5:15. If we can make it 5:30, I'll let everybody know, but we'll plan 5:15. All right. Further discussion on agenda setting? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. The work session will start immediately following this meeting.
Special meeting?